again, and welcome back to Sew What, our conversational sewing show with me, Stuart from the Wool Patch, and of course, Master Tailor Couturier, Carole Elaine. Hey, Carole.
Hey, Stuart. The end of another day. How are you?
Isn't it just? And another Sew What episode. So it's lovely to be back. We had some lovely feedback from the Jersey video, our conversation on Jersey, didn't we?
We did indeed, yeah. And a lot of problems, I think, are starting to resolve, aren't they? We've got some solutions to some of the problems that people are having, which is great. This is what it's all about, really.
Absolutely. And building our knowledge base and our repertoire as we become more confident sewers. And that could be at any level, can't it? It could be people who have been sewing with Jersey for years. And that just reminded me, actually, one of the answers about when we were talking about why Jersey rolls, why knit rolls, and it's because of that uneven distribution of fabric.
Right.
And there was a comment saying, "Oh, I've only just learned that today." So it's never too late, are we, to learn?
No, it's not. And I think sometimes I see it on a smaller scale, but it was a revelation to me to see it with that knit, that that whole different texture. And what you showed us, really explained it far better than anything I've seen in my work. So.
Well, they are. See, win-win all around. So today we're going to be talking. We're going to carry on with the Jersey theme because I think you've made more progress on your garment that you started last week, haven't you?
That's right.
And then we're going to talk about interfacing with that. Is that right?
Yes, I'd like to do that. I'd like to talk a little bit more about how to control these tricky fabrics. We know they're tricky. We know they roll. We know they're fluid. We know they're have a mind of their own sometimes. And we know that sewing is about putting two things together and they have to marry up. Yeah. Well, sometimes half of that marriage goes haywire, right? And and we don't know why. We don't know why. It could be cut slightly off grain, or it was pressed differently or handled differently, something. And they don't match. So it's how to give yourself an edge and how to control everything. And today in the shop we had our R&D team in. So when you're making a collection, for the high street, ready-mades, a lot of work goes in that maybe people don't realize. So we started.
When you said R&D,
research and development.
Oh, cool. Of course, yes.
Okay, so you're researching the garment, the history. You're researching fabrics, you're sourcing fabrics. Yeah. All of that goes in before you even start making the garment. Wow. And then the development side is usually the pattern development. And then you put those two things together, your cloth, your pattern, and then you try it out. So it's an ongoing thing. And so with our dress that we were talking about, we just had fabric draped on a stand, didn't we?
Did you?
Now we've got a dolman sleeve.
Ooh.
A dolman sleeve. So there's an overarm seam here.
Yeah.
And there's an in-arm seam here. There's no seam on the shoulder.
No.
It's called a dolman sleeve. And
any reason why? Is that a name of someone that came up with that?
It's what it's called. Professor Dolman, perhaps. I don't know. It's one of the sleeve variations, and I'm sure a lot of our sewers, experienced sewers, know this very well.
Yeah.
So we've got this combined with a boat neck. So it's shaped like a boat.
Yeah. Yeah.
It goes shoulder to shoulder. And when you're developing this, you want to make sure that any undergarments don't show.
That's going to be hard, isn't it? Right. Because some people's shoulders are more broad than others. So how do you research at what length is a good boat neck and what isn't?
Perfect question. Really good question there. We're using, of course, mannequins that have, decades of development. And then we take standardized measurements. Today we had 5 or 6 people try this on. So we worked with their shoulders spread there. And so this is, half of the dress. We're happy with the top.
Wow.
And now we're going to, in the next couple of days, we're going to attach the skirt, and we're going to be developing the blouson. How much do we want? How much of an overlap do we want? Do we want to belt the dress? Do we want it? It's going to have probably an elasticated waist in it. So again,
Wow.
it's just an ongoing thing. This garment is evolving from a drawing or an inspirational piece or something the designer has seen on the high street or the catwalk, and we're going to try to recreate our own version of this.
That's so exciting.
And
That must have been lovely when you had all the different people in trying it on. Were you putting in pins, going, oh, is it too long or is it too short?
Yes, well, one thing we realized is that I had cut the dolman sleeve a little higher with the prototype. And so the designer said she wanted more fullness down here because the cloth is practically weightless.
I can see the drape. It looks beautiful.
Pretty, isn't it? So we think now that we have a good match of cloth to design, and it's a bit sparkly. It's got that lurex thread in it, the silver.
Yeah.
So that gives it a bit of jazziness. And then we also worked on how this is going to go over the head. So
yes.
Back slit. But you see, we're going to talk about this because you can see that's lovely and crisp, isn't it?
Yeah, now that's not as floppy as everything else. So
that's right. So we've got some architecture in there. We have some stability, and we're gonna talk about that. You'll see in the video using fusing, which we've talked about.
Yeah. How
we get this floppy fabric to do that, to be obedient.
Oh.
Right? So the magic of the preparation, really.
Yeah, that's a brilliant example of that, where you've prepped that, and during the development stage, you said you obviously the first part of your sleeve you cut shorter, so you've now developed it so it's now longer. Did you develop different weights of fusible or interfacing? Did you try different weights, or was it just lucky first time worked quite well?
Well, I knew that I would have to use something on the lighter side.
Right.
A weight that wouldn't overwhelm what we have.
Yeah.
Wouldn't put too much stability and too crisp.
Yeah.
So I'll explain this in the video, but I used a piece of fusing and I cut this on the bias. So it's just a little bit more pliable, fluid.
Yes.
So instead of putting it on the straight, I put it on the bias, so it just moves a little bit.
Yes, but it's still firm, but you've got an extra little bit of give.
That's right. And it's nice when part of the garment, just the right bits of the garment, have that stability, like the sleeve cuff and your neck, and then your closure. It's really nice when everything else can just flow and be really free and drape and have all that spontaneity and movement, but yet where you need the structure, you have it. So it's deciding where and when to use those tricks.
Absolutely. Oh, well, there we are. Then let's go straight into a little video that Carole's prepped for us, explaining about the interfacing and where she's perhaps, as you said, I love that word, where certain parts have got architecture in to give it body.
So we've been talking about sewing with jersey and other couture fabrics that are tricky because they're slippery and they're quite fluid. And here's another fabric which is very testy. This is silk velvet. And you can see just how tricky this must be to control. So one of the things that you can do to stabilize is to use a fusing. Now this is a woven fabric. You can see this is the black that I've got attached here. And what this does is, if you get a nice woven one, you can see how it keeps everything taut. So I'm trying to stretch this, and you can see that it's not going anywhere because this is attached and it's stabilizing the fabric. And if you're working with couture, for example, the garment I'm going to be working on next is this 30 style suit. So there's a lot of areas which we really need to control. The points of the lapel here. We want the front edge, the roll line and the front edge to be secure and taut. We want the length to be maintained. We might have some bound buttonholes here. We want those to be very stable and neat and hold their shape. And then any other detail that we're putting into the garment, want to make sure that we're going to get nice square lines. And even if it's, it's a little bit more creative with the cutting, we want to make sure that everything holds its shape. So that's just one fabric we're working with. Now we're going to go back to our knits, and I'm working on this dress here, which is in 2 pieces. It has a top with a dolman sleeve and a skirt. And I want to show you, first of all, how by using fusing, you get this really nice, clear, clean, very crisp neckline. The structure underneath is a simple warp and weft fusing, which I've attached on, an overlocked edge, seam allowance here, which I've clipped around the curve. And I don't know if you can see, but there is an understitch here as well. It's not going to show up too clearly because it's red on red, and then it has this lurex. But when you're using your overlocking, there's another thing you can do to be a little bit creative with it. You can see here that I'm actually using 3 different colors of thread. I've got red, I've got a claret, and I have a mauve color. And this is another way that you can kind of hide what you're doing on the edge. So that keeps it nice and diffuse the color. The other thing that we can do here is we can turn this under, and we can make a machine stitch there, and that keeps the overlocking completely out of the way, because as you know, it's very easy to pick up one of these loops and then the whole overlocking can just come away and it can become taut. So this is probably the most secure way to keep your work nice and clean. Seam finishes. We have a centimeter seam, which I've overlocked and I've pressed to one side. So because knit tends to curl and it is a little bit fluid, this keeps it all clean and going in one direction. So on the outside of the garment, you've got that nice finish. And just one more thing I want to show you, which is on the sleeve hem. It's not finished yet, but you can see that I've put a piece of fusing in here, which is on the fold line and comes past the fold line, okay? So your facing, which is this part here, the facing is completely fused, but also you get a little bit of fusing going into the sleeve itself, so you get a really nice hang and a nice crisp finish. So there you are, just a few tips and tricks with working with knits, which can be a little bit tricky and a little bit slippery, and how you can use fusing to control your work.
There we are. So that was fascinating, especially seeing where you had put the interfacing. Interfacing fusible is the same name. We just call it different things, isn't it?
So interfacing is part of the architecture of the interior of the garment. And so interfacing can be woven or non-woven, and it can be fusible or non-fusible. So it's all interfacing, interlining, but it just depends how it's treated and how you use it, whether it's with an iron through heat or whether you just hand sew it in.
So on your cuff one, if you can show us that one again, that was, did you hand sew that in? I know you said on the machine you've got a nice interlocked edge.
Yes. So this is fusible.
So you've ironed that down.
I ironed it on with an iron. I put a little bit of, sprayed it with just a little bit of mist, and then I put a press cloth over it, and then I left the iron on for a good 15 seconds. Before picking the iron up. I mean, you don't move the iron like when you're pressing. You move the iron all the time. When you're applying fusible, you just put the iron on top, leave it, pick the iron up, put it on a new section. I mean, that is the safest way. We're not talking about a huge amount of interfacing here, but if you were fusing, say, the whole forepart of a garment, then you have to be really, then you take it to a professional fusing service and they would do like a whole meter of fabric at once.
Oh, and yes, we talked about that before, and that's where I've forgotten her name. Serena got a bit of a cropper with one of her dresses because she fused a huge amount of fabric herself, didn't she? And it got all bobbly.
With a domestic iron, and didn't get that even that overlap, you know. That was heartbreaking, wasn't it, for her? Because otherwise the garment was a huge hit. It was a beautiful, you know, good fabric with a good design. It was, you know, she was on her way, but that just let her down, didn't it?
So you've got architecture on the sleeve there. You've got architecture. Just show us the back of that again, because that would just look. You could.
Yeah. So this is how we're going to get into the garment. It's going to have a covered button and a loop.
Oh.
And then inside here this is all fused inside. You can see that the white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay.
And how did you cope with the boat neck? What decision did you make there with the edge of that? Or is that just? Oh,
there's a big facing.
Yeah.
We've got a very generous facing, which is fused, and then it's overlocked on the edge.
Yeah.
And then see what that does is that puts this strength and stability all the way down here.
Yeah.
And then there's a separate section of interfacing here.
Yeah.
There's interfacing down here on the straight, because I've got a tiny little facing, which is just at about 1 centimeter here.
Yeah.
Where the fabric rolls in and then it joins on to my other facing.
Oh.
And then there's a seam on the shoulder here. There's a seam on the shoulder, the garment. There's also a seam on the interfacing.
Wow.
So it's married up. It's not just like, sometimes we finish a neck with just a bias strip, don't we?
Indeed,
There's
yes.
one piece that goes all the way around.
Yeah.
Well, this is actually the same exact shape that goes all the way around the front. It's the same shape and seaming at the shoulder, and it's exactly the same shape at the back as well.
Oh, just lovely.
That's quite pretty.
I was going to say that's quite stylish, isn't it?
It could be that could be the finish.
Maybe
another variation.
The lady does it towards the end of the evening when she's let her hair down. She lets. Oh, it's like speaking to James Bond. Will you my button, sir?
What fun.
I know. Oh, well, that's fine. You can see the fusing doing its work there brilliantly.
It's rather obvious with clothing, how this happens. And there must be things in your work where you have to strengthen, or there's got to be architecture in knitting. There has to be in your quilt making. Maybe you could share with us how you control fabric.
Absolutely. Well, we have good old two things. So in patchwork, we are cutting up lots of fabric. In essence, you're cutting up beautiful fabric into little pieces and sewing it back together in different ways. So sometimes you can be dealing with very, very small bits of fabric. Normally you go down to perhaps 1 inch, 1.5 inch squares. You could be doing a lovely, what we call 1, 2, 3, like a 9 patch there.
Yeah.
You could be making a beautiful 9 patch block that is literally 4 inches. So you think of all those 1, 2, 3, 4, 9 squares, how small they are. So if you were to cut that fabric just straight away, you're going to have lots of bias, aren't you, when you cut all your fabric up. So what we tend to do is we bulk spray our fabric first. And we have this called Best Press. That's a brand name, Mary Ellen. It's a starch, or what they call a sizing. You size your fabric. Have you heard that terminology before?
I've bought fabric that has been sized. They say. I've never seen that. That's amazing.
And this is like a little spray. With this one's got no scent. And what that is good for, this one, Best Press, just gives a very light sizing. It's actually very good for getting that crease out. When you buy fabric on the bolt, you've got that fold, that crease at the top, haven't you?
Yes.
Maybe not so with dressmaking fabric, because I think dressmaking comes on the bolt, on the tube, doesn't it? But
That's right.
Patchwork fabric comes with a fold in it, and that is very difficult to get out with your normal iron. So this helps the iron to get that annoying crease out. But if you were doing patchwork, I might want to use a bit more than just this. So I have to say I'm a good fan of starch.
Oh, you don't say.
Yeah, basic starch. And you spray your, what, 1/2 meter of fabric and put your iron on. And then if you want it stiffer, spray again and put your iron on again. And it comes out beautifully crisp. I mean, it's like it's almost firm. It loses its floppiness.
Does this does it get all over your hands and muck things up? What happens to the sole plate of the iron? Well, I guess.
Oh, I presume it's all it's for the iron. So it's like what our parents used to do when they were ironing our school shirts.
This is how I remember starch.
Yeah,
you know,
that's it.
And I used to remember that, you know, when we were making tail suits and things, dinner suits, black tie, and they would always bring the shirts back from the dry cleaner, and there would be an instruction: heavy starch, light starch.
Yeah.
You know, a degree of that.
Yeah.
But it's how refreshing. So I just I've never heard of that. You know, preparing fabric, but I can see that some of the quilts I've seen have pretty scary patterns. Like you say, tiny, spiral and things, and
look at that one there.
Look at there. Yes,
so
is that like?
That's a 6, 1, 2, 3, or an 8-inch block, but you've got a 1-inch by 1-inch strip, and then another one, and then another one, then another one, and another one, and another one, and another one, and this is called a log cabin block.
Yes.
So you think when you're cutting those 1-inch strips, and you go to your sewing machine, the fabric could move quite heavily and could blend out of shape because you've cut into the fabric, so you've got bias on show. So the starch just helps save that from flopping about too much. You know, when you manhandle your fabric and you're putting two fabrics together and it's going through the machine, that extra strength of the starch means that hopefully which it's right, the feeding dogs don't you know, warp it out of shape.
Sure. There's lots of things that can go wrong. You think this is this is a mistake-proof machine that we're using, but tensions can, slow down. Sometimes just the speed, just on the presser foot, that can change the way fabric is fed through. But I can now see, because some of the precision in quilt making is mind-blowing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I love the way they use, I know this isn't about stability, but I love the way they use color to create movement in these big patterns.
Yeah, the skill that goes into quilting and patchwork is phenomenal, because you think those blocks, once you've made a 6-inch block, you've then got to attach that 6-inch block to another 6-inch block. And so you need your blocks to be the same size, because if a couple are, an 1/8 of an inch out, it can skew your whole design. And if you're trying to match points, you know what it's like with dressmaking, how important those your little your notches are.
Yes, well, absolutely.
It's a bit like that in patchwork. So starching and sizing is I suppose our way of supporting the fabric in its creation, because in patchwork you're not necessarily going to interface it to make it stronger, so therefore we'll use a starch.
And you're interfacing with your trade, it's like you're spraying on the interfacing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just spraying on that mist and that webbing or whatever it is, and then when you apply the heat, you don't run the risk of some of the risks that we have. It's like putting the iron over it too fast, making a fold in the interfacing, that or having the facing curl the wrong way, then you run over it with a hot iron.
Oh.
That gums up the iron.
Yeah.
Or you cut the interfacing slightly too big when you iron it on your press board, and you trim it, you're left with these little flakes of interfacing stuck. You've just got this smooth little bit of what looks like cardboard, you know, at the end, don't you?
Yeah.
I wonder if that's something I should think about. Does this restrict itself to cotton? Because the cotton can take heat and
no, I not that I know of. But then I'm only really using cotton in patchwork. Patchwork is mainly a cotton fabric. You wouldn't really use anything thicker like an upholstery fabric, and you might use a poplin cotton, but that's then very floppy. Even more so than to use a starch, just to give that poplin a bit more body.
Yes. Does that also help from keep it from fraying? The starch.
It would do technically, because it's gunked together, hasn't it? It's sort of whatever that starch has done to grip everything together. It would, in theory, yes.
So huge bonus.
Oh, absolutely. And if our viewers out there, if you haven't used starch and you're a patchworker doing lots of blocks, then try it. You will be amazed, and you may not go back to not using starch ever again. And you can get, some people don't. I run out of my preferred starch. This is Dylon, so there are chemicals in that. You can buy starches now that are more environmentally friendly and have a non-chemical base. I think her name is June Taylor. She's a patchworker, and her starch is because this is an aerosol. You can get some starches which are like a watering can, a spritzer. So there are different types of starches out there if people have certain, you know, interest of, as I say, this one I just run out, so that was just a Dylon one, like you would use for your laundry, which is absolutely fine.
It does the same thing, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. Well, that's good news that the products are evolving too, to be, you know, better for the environment, better for you in a workshop as well, what you're breathing in and out.
Indeed. And the June Taylor one, I like the June Taylor starch because it's this layered one. So if you only need a little bit of body, then you just do one spritz and iron. But if you really needed it a bit more body because it was going to be cut up lots and you're worried about your bias, then you just spritz another spray and then you iron it down. So you build up your thickness of firmability, as it were. I'm
going to do some tests on this. So it's June Taylor.
June Taylor is the brand. I think she's an American patchworker. I think she's American, but that's the brand. You should be able to get it from your local quilt store, like me.
Yeah,
in stock. But it's a good one. Try it.
I will do. Cheers.
Well,
Cheers
there we go. You see, look at that. So, different ways of how we. I love that idea of building the architecture of that fabric in order for it to do its job.
Absolutely, and it's kind of, sometimes it's a subtle layering, like what you're doing with the spray.
Yeah.
Test it out. Does it have enough body? Put another layer on. Add some more heat. Build it up. It's subtle, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Taking very lightweight cloths and putting something in that's not going to overwhelm it, trying it out, trying it on people, see if the stability is there. You know, it's different with clothing, but we've got the same problems with our work. And then at the other end of the scale, you're making a men's tailored suit. Talk about layering. You know, you've got your canvas, you've got horsehair, you've got domette, you've got and all of these things are put together with loose padding stitches, and they can move and they can mold over time. So the architecture is built over the life of wearing these clothes, where this is for the ready-mades. We don't have that. You can't do that. You can't put that process in a factory. Yeah. You can do it if you're hand making things, you know, and you're watching and making sure everything is layered properly over, you know, as you're building it up. In a factory, these things just shoot down the line, don't they? They go very fast. So then people don't have the time to think, or they just put the notches together, zoom
Yeah.
it through the line.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it has to do a lot with the speed of making the garment, how much time you've got. And this is why it's so, satisfying and fulfilling to be, a home sewer, or to have your own business, or to have it as a hobby. Because you can put the time in. And now there's so much available to help you with that, isn't there? Which is it's a great thing to encourage people on further.
Well, it's going to be lovely seeing this progress. So hopefully when we do another So What, we're going to see the next stage.
You'll see it near finished, and we'll talk about how to put this, because it's a great long pleat up the side of one leg of this dress. It's really lovely. Very feminine, really sexy garment. So we'll be deciding, how high to go with that, and we'll be trying it on different people. And then, of course, you sit down and then you cross your legs, and the pleat completely opens up. So we've got to test that.
It goes back to her at that. She's at a posh do, isn't she? So she's just had a button at the back undone. Now she sits down and
I know, and it's the choreography. Is there's a lot of tolerance in the choreo, isn't there? You can oops, wardrobe malfunction. Oops.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, well, it's so good. Well, talking about you making and enjoying homemaking, look what I dug out of the garage. And I know we sort of, when we were talking about what to talk about today, we were going to talk about fabric and warps and wefts and things, weren't we?
That's it.
So we could talk, hopefully what you talk about we can demo with this. So I've got so much in my garage, and I was cleaning it out on my day off yesterday, and I came across this roll of gingham. So this is 44 inches wide, and I've always liked gingham, but I have always felt a bit like Follow the Yellow Brick Road, Dorothy.
It's Dorothy, and that classic dress. Yeah. I love gingham. I love gingham. It's crisp. It's even. It's absolutely, these intersecting stripes. It's great plaid. I love gingham. Look, it's spectacular. So and
it's quite a I don't know. Is all gingham of a certain weave, as in thin thickness, or do you get different types of thickness of gingham, or does it tend to be a certain weight?
You get a lot of variety of weights and scale of your checks. I've done a lot of work with the 1/8 inch check, the tiny one. Can be a bit stroby, can't it?
Yes. Well, this I think is I think this is probably what would you call it, poplin weight as a cotton? It's
yeah, the weave is poplin.
Yeah, but I don't think see-through. It's very light, but only a little bit. So I think I would do that shirt again that I made when I went wrong with my plackets, and I think that would be a lovely summer shirt. And I might even, I think the pattern to get me away from doing those plackets. Where is it? Oh yeah, here's my sleeve. I think the pattern had a variation to have one of those sleeves where it's almost rolled up and pinned.
Oh yes. And did you have a tab on it? Yeah, why didn't you do that?
So I might do the short sleeve version, but so I'm going to have a go at that because I've got all this fabric to use. So
that's great, and it's an even plaid, right? It's even.
It is. What measure is that? Get my ruler. They are. Oh, they're 1/4 of an inch.
1/4 of an inch. Yeah, you can have some fun with that. I mean, normally when I was taught, it was anything 1/4 of an inch or above, or larger than 1/4 of an inch scale, you would match. Some people do, some people don't. But if it really does offend the eye if it's a little bit off, doesn't it? But you can also have some fun with gingham. Like if you're making your shirt, you can put your pockets on the bias. You can put your plackets on the bias. You can put your collar. You can have a lot of fun.
Ooh.
Because things are on the bias. You need to stabilize it with your interfacing, right?
Interfacing, fusible, yes.
And that works, or your starch, that would work as well. But it takes the pressure off, and then it adds a lot of interest.
Wow.
To have the different angles going on. So you could.
Where we were talking about fabric and weave, so I think I could show you there. Where's my? So that's my selvage edge. You can I can see where the holes are where it's been on the loom.
That's it.
Right.
That's it.
So when I pull that, that's not going anywhere, is it?
You hear that pop, can't you? See, and that's your straight of grain. That is the most stable part of the cloth.
So does that mean it's going? That's that up and down, yeah?
That's correct.
Yeah,
that's correct.
And then when I go this way,
yes,
ooh, look at that. Look, ooh,
a little bit of give. That's your cross grain.
Yeah.
Cross grain, which is 90 degrees to the straight.
Right.
And then if you go take a 45-degree angle,
okay, drop
one hand, drop your right hand a little. Yeah, now stretch.
Ooh, look at that.
That's cool. That's the true bias.
Wow. Okay.
True bias on the 45-degree angle. So, and that's where you'd be cutting. You'd take that 45-degree line, and that would become your straight of grain for all your accent pieces. So your pocket flaps, pocket, gauntlet,
pocket.
That's it. That's it. Yes. Is the band cut
there
separate?
You go.
There you. Oh, yes. Now there you go.
That would be good for the summer, wouldn't it? If I did that version.
Absolutely.
And then I wouldn't have to worry about my sleeve fitting.
Don't worry about that. It will always be long enough, Stuart. You could even put your back yoke on the bias.
Oh, should I do that? That would be good.
Oh, and then, make sure, sorry to interrupt you, but make sure when you fold your yoke in half, you know exactly where the center of that is. And then line that up with the center of your square, which is now a diamond. Make sure that all goes straight down. So visually, when you look at that, you're going to see.
So the center diamond that's on point on the yoke lines up with a square on the straight on the back. Wow.
That's Well, you want to draw. We were talking about your bias line.
Yeah. So on the
picture a straight line going from the top of your red check to the bottom of the red check, but on the bias. So it's going crossways. Yeah.
Oh.
It's going this way, but it's hitting.
Yeah.
That line is hitting the corner of the check, the next corner of the check, the next corner of the check.
Yeah.
See if you can do that. Because if your scale is perfectly balanced, 1/4 of an inch, warp and weft, then it should work. And then that line that's going, that gets tipped. That's now the center back.
I get you.
Gotcha? Same with the pocket flaps. Make sure if your pocket flap comes down to a point like that.
Yeah.
I don't have. Do you have outside flaps on your pockets? No. Okay. No, that's fine.
So what about when I'm cutting my sleeve? I presume I'm not going to attempt, because it's a different angle, so I don't have to try and match that one to that bit, do I?
You could. You can work with your notches and just make sure your notches line up. Say your notches in the middle of a red square.
Yeah.
On your forepart, your front, and on the front pitch of your sleeve, that those line up.
Wow.
And then you'll have a little bit of leeway, but you have to check it on your seam allowance as well, not on the outside of your pattern. What have you got, 5/8 or something? What are you sewing on? What's your seam allowance?
It's a centimeter.
It's a centimeter. Okay. Yeah. So you can, put a pin through your tissue pattern. Put a pin through that seam line where it intersects the notch.
Yeah.
And then yes. So Yeah. I wonder if we should do a little tutorial on that. How to match.
I can see the cutting out of the pattern taking more time than the sewing.
And also in the crown of the sleeve, because you've done this before,
Yeah.
so you know that there's a certain amount of ease in that sleeve crown, isn't there?
Yeah.
So because there's ease in the sleeve, there's no ease on the front or the back. You can't match that. That's not going to work. But once the ease is out and you're down sort of around the pitch here,
yeah,
then you can match a few stripes going across the sleeve and then across the forepart. Takes a little bit of a turn, doesn't it? But no, well, I mean, it's possible.
Well, we will like with your garment, we will chart the progress each week.
Stay tuned.
But I thought it would be lovely to maybe have that as a target, a goal, and maybe get it done for when we start the sewing bee, so I can present with my shirt on.
I mean, what a great idea. You know, and you're working full time, and you've chosen something that has some challenges, right? You've got to want to match the plaids. You also might want to play with the properties of the fabric a little bit, see if you can make some visually interesting things out of it. That might take some trial and error. You might do something like with your yoke, and find out it doesn't look right. You know, it's not perfectly centered, so you might have to cut another piece. So this is all going to take some time, and you're busy. And so
I've got lots of it.
There you go. It's nice to have some to mess about with and to try some things.
And I think that's what I'm looking forward to. Not that I've got 3 meters of fabric and I'm making a garment. I'm actually, I want to use it a bit like what you were saying with the research and development. That is almost an enjoyable, well, I want to have that as an enjoyable process. Yes, exactly. Regardless. I'm not too fussed about the finished item. It's having that time playing and cutting, and if it goes wrong, doesn't matter. I'm going to cut another bit because I've got that fabric there. So it is that a chance to experiment.
And that's the joy of creating things and building things, I find. You know, every time there's a new commission, it's just it's a fresh start, and it's that fresh, yeah, you know, what's possible here.
Yeah.
And I you know, your heart sinks for the people in the sewing bee, because they don't have the time.
No.
They can't think. There's no space. And they get this pattern, they run to the haberdashery, they grab some things, they come back, and then it's a competition, you know, and it's completely different environment, and the pressure is, you know, make the difference in the finished product.
Indeed, and I think that's where some sewing bee contestants have got frustrated, because they want to use the show to experiment. Oh, I'm going to try this. Oh, I think I'm going to try that, which is wonderful. But you just don't have the time to do it. You've just got to make it, haven't you? There is no time to experiment, really.
No, and I think sometimes what I'm hearing on the show is an unreasonable amount of time. You know, you're going to make this in 4 hours, and I think, I wonder if I could do that in 4 hours. You know, it seems, yeah, it's a bit of a crunch. It's crunch time. It is, and it's for whatever the kind of television we want. It's, you know, it's all in the formula, isn't it?
And we're getting close to it. And I think before the sewing bee starts, we might have a little episode where we talk about what we're looking forward to for the sewing bee. That'll be a nice little episode too, won't it? So have you got any projects that you, before we finish, that other than the dress there, that you're doing yourself to have a play with?
Well, I was thinking about what we would do next, and I just happened to have one of my bespoke clients said to me, I've got this leather garment, and I'm going to give it one more season, and then it's going to the charity shop. And I said, why? And she said, oh, it's just going to be such a palaver. Here it is. So this is a really beautiful, can't see the whole thing, it's a really stunning jacket. It's got some lovely, I'll bring it closer to the camera in a minute, but it's got some lovely handwork top stitch on it. But the lining was shot.
Oh.
So what I've done is I've unpicked the lining. Okay, so there's now you can see the inside of the pockets. you can see here, let me bring it a bit closer. You can see here the shoulder pad is come away.
Oh, yeah.
That's a bit of a mess. This hanging loop needs some attention. The interfacing here, it's just come away.
Yeah.
It's not attached anymore, but that's not a very good fusible. The pockets, I think she's put her finger through these. It just needs a general cleanup and a new lining, and then just treating the leather on the outside. She'll have a whole new piece. And, you know, in this day and age when people are thinking deeply about what to spend, what to keep, how to keep the industry, you know, keep things going. Look at that top stitching. Isn't that beautiful?
See, that leather is, and that's the beauty of leather, it just ages wonderful. That's due to the nature of it.
Well, absolutely. And I think it, you know, it's gotten better actually with age. I mean, this pocket is starting to ravel out of place. And so we'll just have to redo that. But the bound buttonholes, they're in good shape. That's fine.
Yeah, yeah.
It just needs a bit of, you know, the old dubbin, you know, that, you know, the leather conditioner or beeswax or something. I'll just give it a good bath. While I'm making the lining, I'll give this a good bath. I'll rub it up nicely. And then when the lining's ready and this is all dry, then I'll put the two together. It will be supple. It won't be so dry and crackly.
Yeah.
But basically, you know, this was made 20, 25 years ago, and it's got the kind of make and the cutting that you don't see today. You know, it has a lot of courtesies in it, which, because of our fast fashion, we're not seeing anymore. So, I mean, this deserves a second life, as it were.
Well, it could go on for another 20 years, can't it then?
Exactly. And I think a lot of people think this when the season changes. They think, I'll just, okay, this is the last year. You know, I've worn this to pieces. It's done. But it's not. It was made once. It can be made again.
Yeah.
Or it can be made better. So I'd like to make a few little films of along the way, how I'm working this, and maybe inspire people to take on a project like this on their own, because that's what we're trying to do. It's not all about making new garments, isn't it? It's about making do and mending, keeping that kind of philosophy going.
And how many of our listeners and viewers out there have got a garment where the lining is starting to come away? I bet there's many. Let us know in the comments below if you've got a garment like this where you think, oh, I could just do that. That is a job I could do, but don't know where to start. Well, then hopefully if you do a couple of videos where we see what you do with that, or just even us chatting, it will maybe just help someone to go, do you know what, I'm going to put that lining right. I'm going to simply repair that pocket so my finger doesn't, my pound coins don't fall through.
Exactly. You can take part of the garment away.
Yeah.
You can lift that out of the way, and then you can repair what's underneath, and then put it back together.
Yeah.
And then you've got a jacket which you can take off in public. Yeah. You know, put on the back of your chair, and it's not going to look torn to rags. But I would imagine most people have something. And the other thing, so just say in kind of closing, that a lot of times the reason why lining comes away or tears, because it shrinks at a different rate from your wool.
Of course.
And a lot of times in manufacturing, they try to give you a centimeter seam. Sometimes they don't. The seams don't line up. They ravel pretty soon before you know it. You've not done anything. You know, it's not like you're cartwheeling in this thing, or, you know, treating it badly. It just comes away because it's not strong to begin with. And
because you think it's getting that, you put your arm through, you brush it up when you put it on, that lining does get more wear really than the outside, doesn't it?
Exactly. There's a lot of stress on the lining.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be brilliant.
We'll see what we can do with this, shall we, Stuart?
I know. We're all inspired to do more. It's wonderful. And our viewers are as well. It was lovely on the last episode seeing what they're doing and what they're making too. It's great. It really is good. That's what it's all about, isn't it? It's just demystifying some things which can come across as really intimidating. We're actually, when you dig down to it, they aren't at all, really, are they? Once you understand, and you've sort of, it's like, you know, a misty window in the morning, you know, and you wipe it away, you can actually understand what you're doing, and it's like, I see now.
It's such a good metaphor, and I think people should remember these things were made once. Somebody made them. Somebody took pieces and bits and reinforced it and put them together. It was made once, and there's that should give you some comfort. You know, you think about it. Was put together, but there are mysteries in it. But once you see, and hopefully whatever questions you have out there, please let us know. We can help wipe the window clean for you.
And so the direction then is easy to see where to go. Oh, what a way to finish. High five.
All right, well done. Well done.
Thanks everyone, it's been lovely talking to you all. Hope you've enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments anything, as Carole says, any questions, anything that is still just a bit too misty for you that perhaps we can help to continue to demystify. Otherwise, we will see you on the next episode of So What. Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.